Yíngyǎng, aka Nutrition, an art show by Isabel as the 2022 Artist in Residence with Durham Art Guild and Golden Belt Artists. This body of work is the product of a process to learn more about myself and other Asian Americans around me through food. The process involved conducting interviews, researching history and traditional Chinese medicine, and reflecting on my own experiences and beliefs. This body of work represents the diverse stories of 4 Asian Americans in North Carolina and how food has played a central role in the evolution of our lives and identities. Throughout this process, I found that our participation in, or abstinence from, food practices resulted in feelings of shame, pride, belonging, and apathy within our own communities. I began to make sense of our experiences today by learning more about the history of Western influence on food across Asia and ignoring or vilifying the food of many Asian American communities. There is a responsibility that we all felt in preserving our culture's foods, which sometimes mirror the responsibilities we felt to our immigrant families to uphold traditional perspectives on gender, sexuality, and education. Studying public health and nutrition, I've seen how foods have been used to shame and detach people from their own communities and cultures, all to conform us into a Western definition of health. But the process of creating this body of work has shown me that food and art making is also a way to build community, share, and document stories and reconnect with ourselves. This work was created in collaboration with Riri Wei, Executive Director of Transplanting Traditions Community Farm, Lisa Pham, second-year MPH student at UNC Gilling's School of Global Public Health, and Zhang Lei, staff at the UNC Department of Asian and Middle Eastern Studies. Pomelo, 24 inches tall by 48 inches wide, oil painting on wood panel. Description: Isabel is positioned in the middle of the image, with both of their hands coming in from the sides. Their hands grasp a half of a pomelo, which is a citrus fruit similar to a grapefruit. The fruit covers the lower half of their face. Isabel stares at the viewer with a neutral expression. Their face is colored in yellow and orange shades. The fruit is bright shades of orange and pink. The background is white and light pink. Fruit often symbolizes femininity, sexuality, and fertility. In Chinese households, fruit is celebrated, often offered as gifts and presented at gatherings for family and friends. In my household, fruit was at the center of the table during the happiest moments and used as a peace offering when we got into explosive arguments. Fruit said to you, "We may disagree, but I still care about you and your health, so eat something." Most anti-Asian hate crimes have been inflicted on Asian women, a direct result of the fetishization and objectification of Asian women's bodies and identities. As somebody who identifies as asexual and gender nonconforming, I've rejected personal expressions of femininity in fear of being targeted by uninvited advancements. I've distanced myself from my ethnic identity in confusion over how Chinese I really am. But these past 2 years have made me reflect on the nuances of gender expression and representation of my ethnicity within and outside of my community. That I'm more than a sweet, juicy yield of a harvest only consumed at the peak of ripeness. I exist both within my internalized racism and bias and outside of others' perceptions of my presentation and my identity. Corn. 48 inches tall by 60 inches wide, oil painting on wood panel. Description. The figure is positioned on the left side of the image. Their face is facing the right in 3/4 perspective. Their eyes are looking to their right. In their right hand is a cob of corn. The corn rests on their mouth, which is slightly opened. The figure is wearing a light green blouse with large-scale pink flowers. Their hair is shades of light purple and black. The figure's skin contains different shades of yellow, pink, and purple, and the background is white. Corn is indigenous to the people of Central America, but it has become incorporated into the cuisines of many cultures across the world, including the American South, such as in North Carolina, and in China. Corn was found in a Chinese herbal book published in the 14th century, before the impacts of colonialization and globalization took place. You can find steamed corn sold on the streets in China as a snack all across the country today, and my parents taught me to love it at home growing up. Yet, corn is also distinctly Americana, showing up on grills and 4th of July barbecues. Whether me eating and learning about the history of corn is an expression of my Chineseness, my Americanness, or me trying to pay respects to its indigenous roots depends on the context I'm eating in and who's making that judgment. It really doesn't matter, but how do we define the identity of foods, specifically plants that have been incorporated into the diets of many people through complicated histories? How do we define people whose ancestors have similarly made those journeys? Do you see me as Chinese American? Chinese American? Ginger. 24 inches tall by 24 inches wide, oil painting on wood panel. Description. A piece of ginger root is broken in half, revealing its yellow and stringy interior. On top of the ginger, the Mandarin character Qi is written in red. Some of the red drips down the painting. The background is white. Studying nutrition for over 6 years in America, I was taught to ignore Eastern perspectives on nutrition and medicine that weren't, quote-unquote, evidence-based. But I dealt with some health issues that couldn't be helped, even with my extensive knowledge about food and health from a Western perspective. I saw a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine last March in 2022, and through that I learned that I had a body composition that is very cold. My hands and feet were always cold, my circulation was poor, and I had some challenges with my menstruation. I learned that I needed to consume foods that would build my blood and warm my body. Foods like red dates, cinnamon, beets, dark leafy greens, and ginger. After 5 months of intentional diet changes and daily prescribed herbs, my symptoms went away. Something that I hadn't felt in years. I think my formal education in Western nutrition still tells me that this isn't a real treatment because it hasn't been tested in a randomized control trial. I think there are aspects to both Western and Eastern practices that we can use to support our individual and community's health. I think there are limitations to both perspectives, but I also see ways Western and Eastern knowledge can coexist and complement each other. Celery. 24 inches tall by 30 inches wide, oil painting on wood panel. Description. A stalk of celery is painted in the middle of the image. The celery is colored in cooler greens and blues. Transparent white paint drips down the celery, making it look cold. The background is white, with some streaks of very light blue and green. Remember when the internet convinced us to insert any health or nutrition trend in the past 20 years? Well, celery juice was all the craze a few years ago. It was said to fight autoimmune diseases, detox your liver, and eliminate bloating. It was marketed as a cure-all for the entire population. This approach to health, finding a solution or treatment that can be generalized to the entire population, ignores the fact that our bodies are all different and respond to foods in unique ways. In traditional Chinese medicine perspectives, celery is a very cooling food. For people with a lot of heat and inflammation, celery could be a good addition to their diet because it can help reduce inflammation and cool the body. But for somebody like me, somebody with a cooler body composition, an excess of celery, such as in the form of juice, might exacerbate its symptoms such as cold hands and feet and poor circulation. Regardless of what a doctor, nutritionist, or an internet personality might tell us to eat, I think it's important to check in with yourself on how foods make your body feel. Because at the end of the day, you know yourself best. Tofu. 24 inches tall by 24 inches wide, oil painting on wood panel. Description. A hand grasps a block of tofu. There are glistens of water on both the hands and the tofu brick. The tofu is a shade of white, gray, and a muted yellow. The hand is hypersaturated with colors of pink, yellow, and orange. The background is a light blue on the top, which fades into a gradient into a light pink on the bottom. The way we interact with food mirrors how we see people, often in very gendered terms. Tofu is a cake made from coagulating soybean milk. Tofu contains compounds called phytoestrogens, which look chemically like the human hormone estrogen. In the West, men think it will give them man boobs. Women fear tofu will increase their risks of breast cancer. However, studies show that phytoestrogens block the negative effects of excess estrogen, including reducing the risk of breast cancer. In the West plant-based spaces, tofu is often manipulated into vegan ricottas and mock chicken. Tofu is either feared and avoided or engineered into something that it's not. At the end of the day, tofu is just a block of solidified soy milk. Nothing to be scared of. Something crafted over thousands of years. Something to appreciate. Spam. 36 inches wide by 48 inches tall, oil on wood. Description. Lisa is positioned on the right side of the image. In her right hand, she is holding a bowl of rice, spinach soup, a tomato egg stir fry, and Spam. She is holding chopsticks in her left hand, which is near her mouth. Her eyes are gazing upwards in contemplation. The background is a muted shade of jade. Lisa's face is painted with many different colors, including pink, yellow, green, and jade. The many colors on Lisa's face reflects the complicated history and relationship Lisa has with the foods of her culture. As a nutrition and public health student at UNC, she was taught to turn her nose to quote-unquote ultra-processed meats, such as Spam, due to studies linking these foods to chronic diseases. Western food and nutrition institutions have effectively forced these foods onto Vietnamese people and then vilified those same foods and the people who eat them. She also now recognizes the bias of Western nutrition standards and the lack of cultural awareness towards many BIPOC food histories. Here, she cooked pan-fried spam, tomato and egg stir-fry, and spinach soup, all served over white rice. Me with cheese. 36 inches wide by 48 inches tall. Oil on wood. Description. Yíngyǎng is positioned on the left side of the image. She looks down while she's eating a plate of me with cheese. Yellow noodles and melted cheese fall out of her mouth onto a green plate. Her right hand holds a silver fork that is beside her mouth. The background is a light muted pink. Yíngyǎng's face is colored in shades of pink, purple, blue, and orange. Me is a yellow wheat noodle that her mom would use in dishes like wonton soup. Yíngyǎng describes her younger self as a picky eater, often not consuming the same foods as her family. When her mother would make a traditionally Vietnamese dish with me, Yíngyǎng would request me with cheese, which is noodles with melted shredded cheese on top. Even today, Yíngyǎng prefers other foods over some Vietnamese foods. She tells me that she sometimes feels embarrassment over the fact that she doesn't connect really with her own culture through food. However, she feels pride in preserving her culture by being involved in Vietnamese and Asian student organizations at UNC and learning her language. Roselle. 48 inches tall by 60 inches wide. Oil on wood. Description. Riri is on the right side of the image, with her face seen in profile. She is smiling and looking at the Roselle plant on the left side of the image. The Roselle plant contains several green branches and leaves, a few dark red and purple buds, and one white flower. Riri's face is colored in many bright shades of pink, purple, red, orange, and yellow. The background is a light shade of green and yellow. Growing and consuming one's culture's foods is often a way to feel at home. Roselle is in the hibiscus family and is widely used for tea in Africa, Asia, and Central and South America. Riri's family grew a lot of different plants and foods in their home in Burma and later in a refugee camp in Thailand. After settling in North Carolina, a lot of those plants couldn't be grown in this climate. But today, her family still grows Roselle, a familiar plant from back home. The leaves can be used in soups and red buds used to make a tasty and medicinal drink. In North Carolina, the climate is not quite warm enough to grow many buds, but they still get a decent harvest around the beginning of autumn.